The next speaker who's going to come up from Democracy, North Carolina, she's actually going to talk about fair campaign finance. But she's going to talk about fair campaign finance in fairy tale fashion. Ladies and gentlemen, Molly Beacham.
It's time for a story, a fairy tale of sorts, of a modern-day Camelot under siege. You, as receiver of the story, will be charged with helping defend the castle. It won't be particularly painful or dangerous, but it will require tenacity. And the cost of doing nothing are immeasurable. Once upon a time, the king of banks was in his counting house counting out his money. He gave generously to the fox's campaign, but the hens didn't find it funny that the very creature elected to promote the general welfare was beholden to the king, but for their plight, he had no care. Wouldn't the Yankee dandies who fought so hard to be free turn over in their grave this new slavery to see? This is not the democratic self-rule for which they fought. A money-dominated, greed-driven election system is what we brought. And the one charged with the rules to keep is in the haystack, fast asleep. Here's an example. Old Wendell Murphy had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and on that farm he raised some pigs, E-I-E-I-O. When neighbors complained about the stench, concerned about polluted runoff when the rains did drench, old Wendell Murphy saw his financial protection in his own pork industry supported election. He won that public privilege to write legislation, and the first thing he penned was hog farm deregulation. With a hurricane here and a hurricane there, here's some poop, there's some poop, everywhere some poop. Okay, this is slide 5. You've seen 1/4. Can you stick with me for 15 more? There was a young woman who lived in a tent. Her home had been taken and she couldn't pay rent. While the bankers on Wall Street had 2 and 3 mansions, she and her kids lived on the meagerest of rations. She'd heard that the banks were cozy with Burr, but why would a senator listen to her? She didn't have cash to give to Senate campaign races to thereby gain access and be in politicians' good graces. And there was a crooked man. He walked a crooked mile because he hadn't seen a doctor in quite a while. The cozy relationship between insurance and Congress left him out of luck during his crooked disease's progress. People's Health as profit center, I'd argue that's what's crooked, but the insurance and pharmaceutical companies will invest to protect it. You can book it. These aren't just Chicken Little stories. The sky really is falling. There's a wolf threatening to take us down, and it is the current campaign finance system. He's blown down our house of straw and demolished those of sticks. It will take a lot of work and diligence, but together we can begin to build a brick house to protect ourselves. It won't happen magically. With the privilege of freedom, there's also a lot of responsibility. It will be up to every capable and thinking person concerned about our future to help change the system. As reforms are won, those same folks will have to constantly monitor and protect what works and change what doesn't. One idea is to significantly change campaigns by providing an alternative funding source. With public campaign financing, candidates prove their viability by talking to a lot of voters and raising from them small contributions. Like Wee Willie Winkie, this requires a lot of shoe rubber and door knocking. In these programs, candidates learn firsthand regular citizens' concerns instead of only cavorting with high-end donors. When a candidate has raised their qualifying contribution and agrees to the spending limits of the program, he receives a grant to run his campaign. These programs are aimed at a government that works for working people. Fair voter-owned elections have advantages. One is it gets candidates off the fundraising treadmill. Instead of spending every hour tied to the hickory-dickory fundraising clock, candidates have time to focus on policy. Time that melted away meeting with big donors helps the 10 o'clock scholar be punctual to policy school, where we need him to be. And what about talented folks who have neither wealth nor access to wealth, but have good ideas about policies to improve our lives? Too often, they're left on the sidelines. Public financing levels the playing field for new voices. That ugliest one popping out of the too big egg could be the next political hero on the verge of helping us realize our greatness. In a nutshell, here's a comparison of our current campaign financing system with the proposed public finance or voter-owned system. This little piggy went to market where the Wall Street dollars rained down. And this little little piggy stayed home, talking to voters all around. This little piggy had roast beef provided by insurance, pharmaceutical companies, representatives from oil and gas. This little piggy had none, required by good conscience and the rules of the voter-run program to pass. And these little piggies cried, we, not money should be at the center of elections. Opponents of public financing will cry, welfare for politicians, bad use of taxpayer dollars, nonsense. Some $1 billion are siphoned off each year now in North Carolina by special interests in the form of corporate loopholes and subsidies. Public financing may not be perfect, but it's worked well in a number of trials across the country, including some right here in North Carolina. The special interests are so deeply entrenched that to them the notion of putting public interest first is quite shocking. It will require every one of us demanding change if we want to win these critical reforms. We need to ask candidates where they stand on voter-owned elections, and we need to hold them to their promises. What if we recruit candidates to run on fair elections platforms or run ourselves? In many uncontested races, even if victory is remote, a candidate at least has the power to raise issues like public financing. Additionally, we can vote with our dollars for or against businesses that taint our elections with their wealth, or we could only donate to candidates who support public financing. We truly are all in this together. In the interest of our financial and physical health, in the interest of preserving skies of blue and seas of green, we'll need all our friends on board demanding change. If we don't do something very soon to address the deluge of political money that affects so many core issues, I fear we're sunk. It's time we kiss the frog. We are in essence the princess. Our government is under an evil spell with warts and slime that can hardly be recognized as a democratic republic. It is up to each of us to kiss the frog so that we might break the spell and begin to have at least a chance of a government accountable to us.